The lawyer's letter arrived 3 days before I was supposed to sign away $15 million for 5. I was standing in my kitchen in East Vancouver, watching the rain streak down the window, when I heard the mail slot clatter. My dog, Bailey, a 12-year-old golden retriever, lifted his head from his bed but didn't bother getting up. At his age, he'd learned to save his energy for things that mattered. I wasn't expecting anything important. The funeral had been 2 weeks ago. I hadn't attended. My father, Robert Warren, had been dead to me long before his heart actually stopped beating on November 28, 2024. 10 years of silence does that to a relationship. 10 years since the last words we spoke to each other. 10 years since I walked out of his Shaughnessy mansion and decided that my pride was worth more than his money. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper. The return address, Reed Morrison and Associates, barristers and solicitors, with an address in downtown Vancouver I didn't recognize. Not the family law firm, not Whitmore and Davidson, where my father had done business for 40 years. I almost threw it away. Almost. Something made me open it instead. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note clipped to a business card. The note read, "Mr. Warren, this is regarding your father's estate. It is imperative that we speak before December 20th. Please call immediately. This is time sensitive. Patricia Morrison, December 20th. That was the day I was supposed to sign the documents my brother and sister had sent over. The day I was supposed to take $5 million and disappear from the Warren family forever. I looked at the business card, then at my phone. It was December 17th, 3 days. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. I told myself it was just the cold. My apartment was always cold in December, even with the heat on. But I knew better. I'd spent 10 years building a life away from my father's shadow. 10 years as a software engineer living in a modest apartment, driving a 10-year-old Honda, shopping at No Frills. I'd convinced myself I didn't need the Warren money, didn't want it, didn't care about it. But $5 million, that was different. That was financial security for the rest of my life. That was never worrying about money again. And all I had to do was sign a piece of paper. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Morrison and Associates. Patricia Morrison speaking. This is Thomas Warren, I said. I received your letter. There was a pause. Then, Mr. Warren, thank you for calling. Can you come to my office today? This afternoon, if possible? What's this about? Your father's estate. I'm afraid I can't discuss details over the phone. It's sensitive. That word again. Sensitive. The same word my brother Kenneth had used when he'd shown up at my door 2 weeks ago with his expensive suit and his expensive briefcase and his expensive offer. I looked at Bailey. He was watching me with those wise old eyes that had seen me through a divorce, a layoff, and more lonely dinners than I cared to count. I can be there at 3, I said. I should back up. I should tell you how I got here, to this moment, to this choice. It started 4 weeks ago, the day my father died. I found out from a text message, not from Kenneth or Maggie, from my ex-wife, Linda, of all people. She still followed the society pages, still paid attention to the world I'd left behind. Saw about your dad, the text read. I'm sorry for your loss. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before I Googled his name. The obituary was already posted. Robert James Warren, 85, prominent Vancouver businessman, philanthropist, collector of rare books, survived by 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Services to be held at Christ Church Cathedral. I didn't cry. I'd done my crying 10 years ago when he told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. When he said that walking away from the family business to play with computers was a betrayal of everything he'd built. When he said that if I left, I shouldn't bother coming back. I'd called his bluff, and he'd never blinked. The day after the funeral, which I didn't attend, Kenneth showed up at my apartment. I hadn't seen my brother in a decade, but he'd aged well. 64 years old, and he still had that effortless confidence that comes from a lifetime of having money. His hair was silver now, perfectly styled. His suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. Thomas, he said when I opened the door. Not Tom. Never Tom. We need to talk about Father's estate. I should have closed the door right then. Instead, I let him in. He didn't waste time on small talk. Kenneth never did. He sat on my second-hand couch, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a folder. Father left an estate worth approximately $15 million, he said. Properties, investments, The collection. Maggie and I have been managing his affairs for the past 5 years, since his health started declining. I waited. There had to be more. The will divides everything equally among the three of us, Kenneth continued. 5 million each, more or less, after taxes and expenses. Okay, I said slowly. But there are complications. He pulled out a document. Father's will is from 2019, before his stroke, before his dementia diagnosis. There's a good chance someone could contest it, argue he wasn't of sound mind when he made his final arrangements. Contest it? Who would contest it? Kenneth's smile was thin. Anyone with a financial interest. Distant relatives, former business partners. The process could take years. Legal fees could eat up a significant portion of the estate, and during that time, everything would be frozen. No access to funds, no ability to sell properties or liquidate assets. I was starting to see where this was going. Maggie and I would like to avoid that, Kenneth said. We'd like to settle this quickly, cleanly, and move on. We're prepared to offer you $5 million, cash, within 30 days. In exchange, you sign a waiver, releasing all claims to the estate. What's the catch? No catch, just discretion. A non-disclosure agreement. You take the money, we handle the estate, and we all go our separate ways. No lawyers, no probate court, no publicity. He slid the papers across my coffee table. They were already prepared, already dated, waiting for my signature. Why the rush? I asked. Kenneth stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. Because I'm trying to do the right thing, Thomas. For once, let's not turn this into a fight. Father may not have been perfect, but he wouldn't have wanted his estate turning into a circus. After he left, I sat on my couch for hours, staring at those papers. $5 million. The number kept echoing in my head. I could pay off my debts, buy a real house, maybe even retire early. I was 63 years old. How many good years did I have left? But something felt off. Kenneth had always been smooth, always been persuasive, but this felt different. The urgency, the pre-printed documents, the way he'd emphasized discretion. I called Maggie that night. My sister was 2 years older than me, 65, and unlike Kenneth, she'd always had a softer edge. When we were kids, she'd been my protector. When I'd announced I was leaving the family business, she'd been the only one who'd hugged me goodbye. Tommy, she said when she answered. Her voice cracked. I'm so glad you called. I wanted to reach out after Dad passed, but Kenneth said to give you space. He came by today, I said. About the estate, I know. We agreed it was best to settle things quickly. For everyone's sake. $5 million, Maggie. That's a lot of money to just hand over without questions. It's what you're entitled to. A third of the estate. We just want to avoid the courts. Avoid dragging this out. You know how these things can get ugly. Do I? I haven't been part of this family for 10 years. Silence on the other end. Then, Tommy, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But this isn't about the past. This is about doing what's practical. What makes sense. Please, just think about it. The offer is good until December 20th. After that, everything goes to probate, and we're all at the mercy of the lawyers. December 20th. 3 weeks away. Why that date specifically? I asked. That's when the contest period ends. After that, anyone who wants to challenge the will has to go through a much more complicated process. If we can settle before then, we avoid most of the risk. It sounded reasonable. It sounded smart. It sounded exactly like something Kenneth would have researched and Maggie would have agreed to because she trusted him. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I spent the next week trying to focus on work, on my normal life, but the papers sat on my kitchen counter like a weight. $5 million. All I had to do was sign. I talked to friends about it vaguely, without names or details. Every single one told me to take the money. Are you insane? My best friend Marcus said over beers at our usual pub. Your family is handing you $5 million, and you're hesitating? Doesn't it seem weird that they're in such a hurry? They're rich people. Rich people always want to avoid probate. Sign the damn papers, Tom. But I couldn't. Not yet. Then, on December 12th, something strange happened. I received an email at work. The sender was listed as unknown, and the subject line was blank. Inside was a single sentence. Don't sign anything until you read your father's letter. No signature. No explanation. When I tried to reply, the email bounced back. Address not found. I stared at that message for an hour. What letter? My father hadn't spoken to me in 10 years. Why would he leave me a letter? I called Kenneth. Did Dad leave any personal letters? Anything addressed to me? Not that I'm aware of, Kenneth said. His voice was careful. Why? Just curious. Thomas, you're not having second thoughts about the settlement, are you? Because I need to be clear, this offer has an expiration date. If you're not ready to move forward, we need to know now. I'm thinking about it. Think faster. Time is running out. He hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at that mysterious email, and felt the first real prickle of suspicion crawl down my spine. That's when I started digging. Nothing dramatic, just basic research. I Googled my father's name along with will and estate. I checked public records. I looked up the contest period Maggie had mentioned. That's when I found it, buried in a legal forum discussion about BC estate law. Someone had posted a question about a similar situation, siblings trying to settle an estate before a contest period ended. And one of the responses had said, "Be careful. Sometimes beneficiaries rush to settle because they know there's a more recent will that benefits someone else." A more recent will. My hands were shaking as I called the number for Dad's old law firm, Whitmore and Davidson. I got transferred 3 times before I reached someone who could help me. "I'm Thomas Warren," I said. "Robert Warren's son. I'm trying to get information about my father's estate." The woman's voice was sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Warren, but we can't discuss client matters without proper authorization. I'm a beneficiary. Doesn't that give me the right to see the will? You'll need to go through the executor. In this case, that would be your brother, Kenneth Warren. What if I think the executor isn't being honest with me?" A pause. "Then you may want to consult with your own attorney, Mr. Warren." I was about to hang up when she added quietly, "But for what it's worth, you might want to check if there was more than one law firm involved in your father's estate planning. Sometimes clients work with multiple firms for different purposes." Multiple firms. That's when I understood. That's when the pieces started falling into place. I spent the next 2 days searching. I called every law firm in Vancouver. Most wouldn't talk to me. But on the 3rd day, I called a small firm in Kitsilano. "Morrison and Associates," the receptionist said. "I'm calling about Robert Warren's estate." "One moment, please." Then a woman's voice, older, professional. "This is Patricia Morrison. How may I help you?" "My name is Thomas Warren. I'm Robert Warren's son. I need to know if your firm has any documents related to his estate." Silence. Then, "Mr. Warren, I've been trying to reach you. I sent a letter to your last known address last week, but it was returned. Would you be willing to come to my office?" That conversation led me to the phone call. The phone call led me to 3 o'clock on a rainy December afternoon, sitting in a small office in a building that smelled like old coffee and law books. Patricia Morrison was in her 70s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Mr. Warren," she said, "I'm glad you called. I've been trying to find you for 2 weeks. Why?" She pulled a folder from her desk drawer. "Because your father came to see me 6 months ago, in June of this year. He wanted to make a new will." My heart stopped. "A new will?" "Yes. He was very specific about wanting to work with a different firm, someone his other children didn't know about. He said he needed to make sure certain arrangements were honored." She opened the folder and handed me a document. The top page read, "Last Will and Testament of Robert James Warren, dated the 15th of June 2024. I scanned the first page. Legal language, standard clauses. Then I got to the distribution section. "To my son Thomas," I read aloud, "I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, investments, and personal effects, with the following stipulations." I looked up at Patricia Morrison. "This leaves everything to me?" "Not quite everything. There are specific bequests to your siblings. Your brother receives $50,000. Your sister receives $50,000. The rest, approximately $14 million after taxes, goes to you." The room was spinning. "Why?" She pulled out another document. "This is a letter your father left for you. He asked that I deliver it personally. But since I couldn't locate you, I'm glad you found me." The envelope was sealed, my name written on it in my father's shaky handwriting. I recognized it even after all these years. "Before you read that," Patricia Morrison said gently, "you should know that your father was very clear-minded when he made this will. I required a medical evaluation from his doctor confirming his capacity. I had 2 witnesses present. This document is legally sound. Do my brother and sister know about this? Her expression told me everything I needed to know. Your brother requested a meeting with me 3 weeks ago. He said he was the executor of your father's estate and wanted copies of all documents our firm had on file. I informed him that we had a will, but that I couldn't release it until after the official probate filing. He became quite insistent. He knows, I said slowly. Kenneth knows about this will. I believe so, which is why I suspect he's been trying to get you to sign a settlement agreement before the December 20th deadline. After that date, this will become public record through the probate process. Anyone can see it. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Kenneth and Maggie weren't trying to protect the estate from contests. They were trying to buy my silence before I found out what Dad had actually left me. $5 million. They'd offered me $5 million to sign away $14 million. What do I do? I asked. Patricia Morrison folded her hands on her desk. That's up to you, Mr. Warren. You can accept their settlement and walk away with $5 million. Or you can refuse to sign, allow this will to go through probate on December 20th, and claim what your father actually left you. Either way, you should read his letter. I think it will help you decide. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. I'd spent 10 years angry at my father, 10 years convinced he'd chosen money and legacy over his own son, and now he was reaching out from beyond the grave to tell me. What? Can I read this alone? I asked. Of course. Take your time. I'll be right outside. After she left, I sat in that quiet office and opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter was 3 pages long, written in my father's handwriting, dated July 3rd, 2024. My dear Thomas, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and Patricia has found you. I hope she has. I hope you haven't already signed away what I'm trying to give you. I hope I'm not too late. I need you to know that I was wrong. About everything. About the business. About your choices. About the things I said to you 10 years ago. I've spent the last decade of my life realizing what a stubborn, proud fool I was. You were right to leave. You were right to build your own life. You were right to stand up to me. I wanted to call you 100 times. I wrote letters I never sent. Every birthday, every Christmas, I sat with the phone in my hand and couldn't dial the number. Pride is a terrible thing, Thomas. It costs more than any amount of money. I had a stroke 2 years ago. Did you know that? Of course you didn't. How would you? Kenneth made sure it didn't make the news. Good for business, he said. Can't let people think the old man is failing. But I was failing. My mind started going. Some days were good, some days I didn't know where I was. Kenneth and Maggie took over everything. They meant well, I think. They thought they were protecting me, but they were also protecting themselves. Protecting their inheritance. I don't blame them. I raised them to value money above everything else. That's on me. But you, Thomas, you were different. You walked away from money. You chose principle over profit. You chose your own path. That's why I want you to have this. Not because you need the money, though I hope it makes your life easier. And not because I'm trying to buy your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. But because you're the only one of my children who I trust to use this money for something more than just accumulating more money. Do something good with it. Live well. Be happy. Find someone to share it with. Give to causes that matter. Don't let it sit in accounts earning interest. Don't let it define you. And if you can find it in your heart to forgive an old man who wasted a decade being too proud to say he was sorry, then know this. I was proud of you. I was always proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it. I love you, son. I always did. Dad, I don't know how long I sat there crying. Patricia Morrison must have heard me through the door, but she gave me privacy. By the time I'd composed myself enough to walk out of her office, it was almost dark. Take the will with you, she said. Read it carefully. Make your decision. But know that whatever you choose, your father wanted you to have choices. I drove home in a daze. December 20th was 3 days away. 3 days to decide whether to sign Kenneth's papers or let the truth come out. I knew what the smart move was. The safe move. $5 million. No legal battle. No family drama. Just take the money and walk away like I'd been doing for 10 years. But Dad hadn't left me $5 million. He'd left me everything. And more than that, he'd left me a letter I'd been waiting a decade to read. That night, I called Kenneth. I'm not signing. I said. What? His smooth voice cracked. Thomas, be reasonable. We had an agreement. We had an offer. I'm declining it. You're making a mistake. The probate process will be expensive, time-consuming. I'm aware. Thomas, listen to me. There are things you don't understand about Dad's estate. Complications. If you force this to go through probate, you'll regret it. What complications, Kenneth? Tell me exactly what I'm going to regret. Silence on the other end. I'm trying to protect you. From what? More silence. Then, fine. If you want to do this the hard way, we'll do it the hard way. But don't say I didn't warn you. He hung up. I sat on my couch, Bailey's head in my lap, and waited. December 20th arrived cold and clear. I woke up early, fed Bailey, and put on the one good suit I owned, the one I'd bought for Linda's brother's wedding 5 years ago. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. Kenneth, don't hang up, he said. Please, can we meet, just you and me, before any of this goes to court? Where? The house. Dad's house. Maggie's here too. We need to talk. I almost said no. Almost. But something in his voice made me agree. The Shaughnessy mansion looked exactly the same as it had 10 years ago. Same stone facade, same manicured lawn, same sense of old money and older traditions. I parked my Honda next to Kenneth's Tesla and Maggie's Mercedes and felt like the poor relation I'd become. Maggie opened the door. She looked like she'd been crying. Tommy, she said. Thank you for coming. Kenneth was in Dad's study, sitting behind Dad's desk like he owned it, which, legally, he didn't. Not anymore. Let's cut to the chase, Kenneth said. You found the new will. I did, and I assume Patricia Morrison told you about the distribution. She did. Kenneth leaned back in the chair. Here's what you don't know. Dad made that will when he was heavily medicated. 6 months ago, he was on painkillers, anti-anxiety medications, sleeping pills. His judgment was impaired. His doctor certified his capacity. Doctors can be influenced, especially doctors who've been on the family payroll for 30 years. I looked at Maggie. She was staring at her hands. You're going to contest the will, I said. We'll do what we have to do to protect Dad's legacy, Kenneth said. And ourselves. That will is a product of manipulation and undue influence. Whose manipulation? I haven't spoken to Dad in 10 years. Patricia Morrison's. She convinced a sick old man to leave his money to the son who abandoned him. The words hit like a physical blow. I stood up. I'm done with this conversation. Wait. Maggie's voice was soft. Please, Tommy. Sit down. Kenneth, stop. Kenneth started to protest, but Maggie cut him off with a look that reminded me of our mother dead now for 15 years, but still present in moments like this. Tommy, Maggie said. The truth is that Kenneth knew about the new will 3 weeks ago. He's been trying to get you to sign the settlement before you found out. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know until yesterday. Kenneth's face flushed. Maggie, no. She turned to him. I'm done lying. I'm done with whatever game you've been playing. Dad left his money to Tommy. That was his choice. We don't have to like it, but we don't get to change it. You're seriously going to just give up $14 million? It's not mine to give up, Maggie said quietly. It never was. She turned back to me. I'm sorry, Tommy. I'm sorry I didn't question Kenneth when he showed up with those papers. I'm sorry I didn't reach out after Dad died. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I didn't know what to say. 10 years of silence, 10 years of built-up resentment. And here was my sister apologizing for something that wasn't really her fault. Did you read his letter? I asked. Kenneth did. He wouldn't show it to me. I pulled the letter from my pocket and handed it to her. She read it slowly, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she handed it to Kenneth. Read it, she said. He did. His expression never changed, but his hands shook slightly as he put the letter down on the desk. He blamed us, Kenneth said finally, for keeping him from you, for controlling his life, for caring more about money than family. He blamed himself, I corrected, for raising you that way. Kenneth stood up and walked to the window. I've spent 40 years running Dad's business, building it, growing it, making this family name mean something, and he leaves it all to you. He left you $50,000. That's an insult. That's what he thought you deserved. The words hung in the air like poison. Maggie flinched. Kenneth turned around, his face hard. You know what? He said. Take it. Take all of it. Contest every penny if you want. I'll make sure the legal battle drains most of it before you ever see a dime." Kenneth Maggie started. "No, I'm done. I've spent 2 weeks trying to settle this quietly, trying to avoid exactly this kind of family destruction. But if Thomas wants to burn it all down, fine. Let's burn it down together." He walked out. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Maggie and I sat in silence for a long moment. "He'll calm down," she said finally. "Eventually. Will he? I don't know. Maybe not." She stood up, smoothed her skirt. "For what it's worth, I'm not going to fight you. If you want to go through probate, file the will, take what Dad left you. I won't contest it. You have my word." "Why?" "Because I read that letter. And because I remember who you were before everything fell apart. You were the only one of us who had the courage to walk away from all this." She gestured around the study, at the books, and the art, and the expensive furniture. Maybe Dad knew what he was doing after all. After she left, I sat alone in my father's study for a long time. I thought about 10 years of silence. I thought about pride and stubbornness, and the cost of being right. I thought about 5 million versus 14 million. About easy money versus hard-fought inheritance. But mostly I thought about the last line of my father's letter. "I was proud of you. I was always proud of you." I called Patricia Morrison. "I want to proceed with probate," I said. "File the will. Let the chips fall where they may." "Are you sure? Your brother may make this difficult." "I'm sure." "Very well. I'll begin the process tomorrow. But Mr. Warren, one more thing. Your father left specific instructions with me. If you chose to fight for the inheritance, if you chose to honor his wishes instead of taking the easy settlement, he asked me to tell you something." "What's that?" "That you were always his son, the one who understood what actually matters, and that he was sorry he didn't tell you that when he had the chance." I barely made it to my car before I started crying again. The probate process took 6 weeks. Kenneth hired 3 lawyers and challenged everything: the will's validity, Patricia Morrison's ethics, even Dad's medical records. But in the end, the will was ironclad. Dad had been careful. He'd known his other children might fight. In late January, the estate was settled. After legal fees and taxes, I received just over $12 million. Kenneth didn't speak to me. Hasn't spoken to me since that day in Dad's study. He took his $50,000 and severed all contact. Maggie says he's bitter, angry, convinced I somehow manipulated our dying father. Maybe he'll come around someday. Maybe he won't. Maggie and I have coffee once a month now. She tells me about her grandkids, about her volunteer work at the art gallery. We don't talk about Dad much. We don't talk about Kenneth at all. But slowly, carefully, we're rebuilding something that looks like a sibling relationship. As for me, I'm still living in my East Vancouver apartment. Still driving my Honda. Still working, though, now part-time, on projects I actually care about. I've donated $2 million to causes Dad would have approved of: literacy programs, scholarships for kids from poor families who want to study engineering. The kind of thing he should have done when he was alive but never quite got around to. The rest I've invested conservatively. Not to grow it, not to build an empire, but to ensure I never have to worry about money again. To ensure I can help people who need it. To ensure that when my time comes, I don't leave behind the same mess of regret and missed opportunities that my father did. Bailey died last month, 15 years old, peaceful in his sleep. I buried him in the backyard of the small house I finally bought in Burnaby. Nothing fancy, just a place with a yard and good light. I cried more over that old dog than I did over my father, which probably says something about my priorities. But Bailey never asked me to choose between love and money. He loved me when I was broke, and he'd have loved me just the same with $12 million in the bank. Here's what I learned from all this, and why I'm sharing this story with you. Money doesn't buy time. My father had plenty of money, but he wasted 10 years being too proud to pick up the phone. You can't purchase back lost years, missed birthdays, unspoken apologies. The cost of pride is always higher than you think you're paying. Family is complicated. Kenneth chose money over relationship. Maggie chose relationship over money. I chose to honor my father's wishes, even though it would have been easier to take the settlement and run. None of these choices are simple. None of them are purely right or wrong, but they reveal who we are when the stakes are high. Sometimes the hard path is the right path. I could have taken $5 million and avoided months of legal stress, family conflict, and public scrutiny. But I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what my father wanted to say to me. I would have betrayed the man who, in his final months, tried to make amends the only way he knew how. And finally, forgiveness isn't about the other person. When I read my father's letter, when I chose to honor his final will, I wasn't doing it because he deserved it. He probably didn't. 10 years of silence inflicts real damage. But holding on to anger was costing me more than it was costing him, especially since he was already gone. Forgiveness freed me to move forward. It gave me back family, purpose, peace. If you're estranged from someone you love, if pride is keeping you from picking up the phone, if money is tangled up with relationship in ways that poison both, learn from my father's mistake. Learn from mine. Don't wait until it's too late to say the things that matter. Life is too short. I know that now. At 63 years old, with more money than I ever imagined having, and more regrets than I'd like to count, I know that the only wealth that matters is the kind you can't deposit in a bank. The people you love, the time you spend with them, the words you say before it's too late. Everything else is just numbers on a page.